Hello everyone, it's me Calvina. I am here in Goje in South Korea. I moved to South Korea because I've got a job teaching at an international school and I'm really excited to start this new chapter of my life. I know it's going to be a really worthwhile and valuable adventure, but that has to be put on pause because here I am in my apartment for 2 weeks self-quarantine. And so this video is just to document my journey from Wellington, New Zealand to Goje, South Korea during a global pandemic. So traveling during COVID-19, what that is like, coming from New Zealand where there are no community cases, all the cases are just at the border, coming to a country that does not have their borders shut but who have really amazing COVID response systems, and I'll talk a little bit about that throughout this video. So coming to South Korea, there are 2 different types of quarantine that you can do depending on your circumstance and your visa. Because I'm on a long-term visa, I can self-quarantine in my apartment here that's provided by my school, which is really lucky because for all the other short-term people who are traveling to South Korea or people who don't have a permanent sort of residence or place that they can stay, you have to stay in a government facility. When I was researching about coming over to Korea during COVID-19, I did not find a whole lot of information for people who were staying in a self-quarantine residence like I am. Lots of the videos that I saw were about the facility quarantine that you have to pay for, and that's run by the government. So I'm hoping through my experience I'm able to give people some insight around what happens if you are coming to Korea long term during this COVID-19 pandemic and what you can expect. I mean, things are always changing and the situation's always changing, and lots of regulations and things coming from the Korean government are also changing. So it's just at this point in time, this is my experience and that's what I went through. But obviously you'd have to do your own research and find out some of the most up-to-date information yourself. So the type of visa that I'm on is an E-2 visa. It's the visa that is issued to foreign language teachers, and I was sponsored by my school. For the E-2 visa process, you have to send your documents to your employer, and then your employer will hand that in to the immigration office here, and then back in New Zealand, once I've got the visa confirmation number from my employer, then I can go to the embassy in New Zealand to hand in my documents and application there, and then from that point I had to wait 2 weeks for my visa to be confirmed, and then I was finally able to go to Korea. Now this process in a normal situation it would have been pretty simple, but because of COVID-19 it did make things a little bit trickier. The process was dragged out for a lot longer than I expected. When I was applying, Korea was just beginning to have their 3rd wave of fluctuating cases here, and so initially my understanding was I needed a medical certificate from my GP stating I didn't have COVID symptoms, and that was it. But then as the situation continued to get worse in Korea, they requested that I do a test before handing in my visa documents in New Zealand. So I did that test. I had to get the test privately because I didn't have symptoms and it was for travel purposes. That didn't take too long. I got the result the next day, so that was really quick, and then I was able to take those documents to the embassy. After waiting the 2 weeks for my visa to be confirmed in New Zealand, because of the situation with COVID in Korea, it was improving, but I think the government was taking extra precautions. So I found out maybe a few days before I needed to fly that I had to get another test, and that test had to be from 72 hours before I departed. So I had to go back to the same place and get another COVID test. And so I had to make sure that I brought that document along with me when I came to Korea for immigration purposes. And when I was in New Zealand, I had to show my COVID test result to the people before I even boarded the flight. And so they were really thorough in checking that I had everything that I needed and I was permitted to come to Korea. Let's get on with that. I'm going to be showing you a montage of my journey from New Zealand to South Korea. Airlines was one of the airlines that were doing more frequent flights to Seoul compared to Air New Zealand, who would have one direct flight maybe every month. You'll see that when I got on the plane, I had a premium economy seat. It's a little bit more spacious, but you can see that there is that entire row all to myself. I could pretty much sit where I wanted. There were 2 other people in premium economy with me. When I went to the bathroom and stuff, I could see that in the economy area there weren't many people either. Everyone had their own row. You could have like a lie down bed without having to pay the extra. In the premium economy seats, you can't lift up the armrest in the middle between the seats, so I couldn't lie down flat, which was a bit of a shame. So from Auckland to Singapore, that was about a little bit less than 11 hours flight. On that flight we had 2 meals, one for dinner and I think one was breakfast. Hello, so I just got off my flight and now I'm in Singapore in Changi Airport. Flight was about 11 hours. Luckily we got to leave a bit early because there weren't many people on the flight. I'm just waiting for my next flight to go to Incheon, which is in 2 hours, so I've got some time to kill. But we're just gonna sit around and just take a rest. It's really humid here. Having a mask on doesn't help because on the plane it felt alright because they had like aircon and stuff on, but here it's really humid, so I'm like super stuffy and my skin's getting so oily and it's just, I feel really gross. I've still got another flight and then I'm going to have to take some transport to my accommodation in Goje. I'll update you guys a little bit later. Did you just see that face? That face was of someone who had no idea what was about to happen when she landed in South Korea. That was the calm before the storm. I mean, okay, maybe I'm being a bit dramatic, but you decide after you've heard my story about what happened after I landed. So let's start from when I got off the plane after arriving from Singapore into Incheon airport. What I thought was going to happen was it'll be quick and simple. I'll go to the quarantine officers, I'll show them my visa document, I'll show them my negative COVID test, and then I'll be sent to go get my luggage and then hop on a bus and then the journey starts from there. But no, that was far from what happened. After I got off the plane, you make your way to line up to see the quarantine officers. And the quarantine officers want to see your visa and they want to see your negative COVID test that you did before flying to Korea. And so I show the quarantine officer my things, and I wasn't too concerned at this point because I knew I had everything that I needed. As part of the process, they check your temperature. And so he took one of those little temperature fever checking things. It's like the one that they stick in your ear and it's like kind of pointy. And so he stuck it in my ear and he looked at it and then he's like, he looked a bit confused. And then he's like, let me try it again. So he stuck in my other ear and he looked at it and he was still confused, maybe borderline concerned. And so he barely looked at my documents and he's like, just go sit over there. Your temperature's 37.7. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh, wait, what's the normal body temperature again? And I was like, okay. And so I started to feel a little anxious at that point. And so I just sat at the side waiting for one of the other quarantine officers to see me while watching everyone else just smoothly give over their documents and pass through. And I was just sitting there thinking, what is going on? The other quarantine officer finally came to see me and she was asking me a bunch of questions. Well, like firstly my basic details, and then asking, you know, about prior illnesses, existing illnesses, and asking me what kind of medication that I had taken. She checked my temperature again. She's like, yeah, you have a fever. And then I was like, that's really weird because I feel totally fine. I mean, I do feel a bit warm. I don't know if I was just playing that up in my head, but I was like, I feel totally fine. My temperature came out at 37.6, so I actually went down by 0.1 of a degree Celsius. So it did come down a little bit, but then she said, no, I need to send your details to the doctor here at the airport and he is going to assess it and decide if you're going to get a COVID test. I was like, right. I couldn't really say much because that was the process and I just had to go along with it. But then like all these thoughts were racing through my head. I was like, oh my God, did I catch COVID while traveling? This is like the worst case scenario. I was like, but also would I show symptoms that quickly? But luckily when I got to Seoul, it was 7 in the morning. So I was trying to reassure myself. I was like, you know, even if something did happen, you still have a whole day to get to Goje. And so I was like, okay, I can't really do much. The lady said, follow me. She gave me a new mask wear. I didn't even know how to wear that mask. It's kind of embarrassing. It went like all the way around your head. It wasn't the one that goes around your ears. She like led me out of that little area where she interviewed me about my medical stuff. Then she just disappeared. I thought I was going to this counter with these 2 people. And then I spoke English to them and I said, I think I need to do a test because that's what the lady said. They were like, oh, what? I don't think they fully understood me. But then eventually they took me to the right place, which was actually just like a few meters down into this little isolation area where you wait to get your test. I had to sit in this probably 3 meters by 3 meter cubicle with like, all there was a seat. At this point I was like, are they gonna test me here? In that little cubicle area I was just waiting endlessly. I didn't know when someone was gonna come and get me. The people who were there didn't know. You're not allowed to move. It says there's a sign that says no movement, so you have to stay in your little cubicle sitting on the seat unless you want to go to the toilet, and you have to tell them you want to go to the toilet. I was just sitting there. I was just like, what the heck is going on? It was really cute. I was just sitting there and then one of the staff came and gave me like a burger and I was like, oh thanks. So it was good they provided me with food and water while I was there. I was looked after. It's just that it wasn't the most comfortable place, and just thinking about what was going to happen was not comfortable either. I think after maybe about an hour, I'd say 45 minutes to an hour of waiting in that little cubicle, one of the staff there, he's like, all right, let's go. And then I was like, in my head, go where? All I could do was just nod and say okay and like get my things and go with him. And so I followed him. He took me through immigration, so I didn't go through the normal immigration route where everyone else was going. I went through this other way. I did all my immigration stuff. They checked my visa, they checked my documents, and then I got my little slip that says I'm allowed entry into Korea. At this point, look, I don't know what's going on. I'm just blindly following this guy. After immigration, he took me to go get my luggage, which is put aside for me because when that lady went to go to see the doctor, she had taken my baggage tags too. So they'd got my luggage, they put it on a luggage trolley and it was there waiting for me. So I was like, whew, okay, my luggage is all here. I haven't lost any luggage. That's the last thing I want to happen at this point. I got my luggage. I thought we were gonna go somewhere, but then suddenly he like sat down. I was like, okay, I guess I'll sit down too. And then I was like, where are we going? And he's like, oh, I just need to wait for a phone call from his superior or something. And then I was like, what are we doing next? Like trying to just figure out what was going on. At the time I was like, I really feel like I should know what's happening, but because of the language barrier, it was a little bit harder to find out what was going on. But in hindsight, they had really good processes, and just the fact that I didn't know what was going on, but the people who did know what was going on knew what was going on and what to do with me. So we were literally by the luggage carousel, and so we're just sitting there waiting. He's like, yeah, I think it will take 45 minutes. I was like, okay. So then literally 5 minutes later, he's like, okay, let's go. I'm like, then we went through the customs place where, you know, they check your luggage and declaration and stuff like that. And we went to like the main arrivals lobby. And it's weird because I've been through this airport before. It wasn't up until the customs place that I was like, oh yeah, I've been here before. Up until that point, everything just felt so unfamiliar because it was, you know, set up differently because of COVID. Then he's like, put on your jacket. And then I was like, oh, we're going outside. So I put on my jacket. And then outside there was this man in like this full like PPE gear suit. He took my luggage and put it on this bus. It was like a private bus too. I was the only one on that bus. The person drove me to the testing clinic that is nearby Incheon Airport. I think it's part of Incheon Airport. He dropped me off there. Then this other guy came. He directed me to go into the building and he told me to go up the elevator. All the while me dragging my those two big suitcases. The next day my arms were sore. It felt like I had an arm workout. Then there was like another person there and he showed me another little cubicle. In that little cubicle, it was about the same size as the first one, but this time they actually had a desk and they had an office chair, which was a lot more comfortable than the first one that I was sitting in the airport. And I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna be here for a while because I had to do my tests and I had to wait for the results as well. It was good because even though the people didn't really speak English that well, there was information stuck on the table. If you read that, you'd know exactly what was going to happen and what was going on and what the process was going to be. From reading my little information there, I found out that I was at a testing clinic. I found out that this is where you're going to wait after you've done your test for the results, and the most important thing is the test result is supposed to come out 6 to 8 hours, but then the scary thing was they said maximum overnight. I was like, I really hope I don't have to stay here overnight. Like, please come out in 6 hours, please. I kind of got set up and the guy came and told me that it's time to go get my test. I went in to the little office and the lady was there ready to do my test. And keep in mind, I've done the COVID test twice already in New Zealand. I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I did not. The test, I found out, is not the same as what they do in New Zealand. Basically, she had this cotton swab. In New Zealand, it was about this long, but here it was this long. Like literally double the size. I was like, why does she need such a long swab? She did say that she's gonna go swab my nose and my throat. So I thought, oh, okay, like she'll go up my nose and then she'll go like through my mouth into my throat. But this is why the COVID swab was this long. So she stuck it up my nose. I was like, okay, she's gonna swab my nose. I've done this before, it's okay. But she kept pushing it back until I felt the end of the cotton swab in my throat. So it went all the way up and then bent and then went down my throat. I was like, I couldn't move because she said very clearly, she went, don't move. And I was like, okay. And so I was sitting there and I was like screaming inside. She was quite rough with it actually. She had to like move it around to swab, and then so she took it out. I was like, okay, are we done? And then she was not done. She got another cotton swab, which was shorter this time. She put it in my mouth and swabbed like the back of my tongue close to my throat, and I was like, this is testing my gag reflexes right now. She said, oh, the test results will be out in 6 to 8 hours, please wait for that. So I was done. I went back to my little cubicle area. They had internet, which was good, but no power ports, so I was just hoping that my laptop and my phone wouldn't run out of battery. It was good because at that place they provide you with food. They gave out meals meals 3 times a day, 7 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and 7 o'clock at night. I read that if you were staying throughout the night, they might be able to put you up in like a little room, but I didn't have to get to that point. At 1 o'clock, I got my meal, and I was like, so yum. It's the doshirak is like a little lunchbox meal. I think it must be the same as the sort of stuff people get in the facility quarantine, and it tasted really good, so I was really grateful for that. And they had like 3 bottles of water at the testing clinic as well. You can see they've really thought out what you might need while you're waiting for your test. At the 5-hour, I was like, okay, there's 1 more hour to go, because it said minimum 6 hours until I get my test result. But to my surprise, it came before it even reached the 6-hour mark. I was like, thank you. I can't wait any longer. All I've done today is just wait for things to happen. And I was tested COVID negative. So I could finally leave that little 3x3 cubicle that was my home for 5 hours. So I was taken down again and hopped back on that bus that brought me to the testing facility. I was taken back to Terminal 1 in Incheon Airport. At that place, you had to decide how you're going to get to your self-quarantine location. And at that point, I already had the self-quarantine app downloaded, and all the staff want to see your self-quarantine address to tell you where you should go to get to your location. There are lots of options. There were Hangul taxi, which are like quarantine taxis that you can call upon to take you to your accommodation, but I think that's more for if you're self-quarantining in Seoul. I knew that I had to take the KTX, so the Korean train. The nearest train station to Incheon Airport was Gwangwon Station, and so I had to take the limousine bus to go to Gwangwon Station, and that took about an hour. At this point, it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon already. Once we got to Gwangwon Station, you get dropped off at this waiting area where you buy your tickets, and this place is only for overseas arrivals. There was no mingling with the public, which is so well organised on the Korean government's part on how they manage overseas arrivals since their borders are still open. Even on the bus I took from Incheon Airport to go to Gwangwon Station, it was only all overseas arrivals. After I got my ticket, I knew that I was going to Masan, because Masan's the nearest KTX station to Goje. I got the ticket. It cost about 60 bucks, including my ride on the bus from the airport to Gwangwon Station. I was messaging this lady who works at the Goje City Hall. They organise transport for overseas arrivals who come to Goje, and the transport was an ambulance. After a crazy day arriving in Korea and just going through all sorts of drama, I'm ending my journey to Goje in an ambulance. I arrived at Masan Station via the KTX. I come out and I get into this ambulance, and this ambulance is going to take me to my apartment in Goje. It's about an hour's drive, but like, I don't even know if you can hear me. And the thing is, with these windows on the ambulance, to help them with their work, I guess, at night, they keep with a light in, and so when I try to look out the window, I can't actually see anything. Like, you can, all you can see is the reflection, and I try to look outside, but can't see anything, so I don't really know where I am. This is just the cherry on top to a very eventful journey to South Korea during a global pandemic. Welcome to Korea. So finally, after a day and a half of traveling, I finally arrived at my apartment in Goje. Yay! At some point during the journey, I was like, I'm never gonna make it, am I? I'm never gonna make it to Goje, but here I am. I made it. So once we got here, the ambulance driver, so there were 2 of them in the front, dropped me off outside my apartment. I heard him over the little intercom thing, said in Korean, okay, it's time to get off. And so I was like, okay. And then I got my luggage. I thought like maybe at some point the people who were in the ambulance would come and just kind of at least acknowledge that I got my things and I was being sent off. But no, the entire time, the 2 people just sat in the ambulance, probably watched me struggle with my luggage, because at that point I just had enough of dragging around my luggage. I made eye contact with the guy in the passenger seat, and he just nodded at me, and then I like nodded back, and then off they went. There I was standing there in the darkness a place I'd never been to before. I was just supposed to find my way to the entrance of my apartment. But luckily my friend who'd come a few weeks earlier, who lives in the same apartment, I was able to call her, hey, help me. She was really helpful and she told me how to get to the main entrance and how to actually get into the building and up the elevator and to here, my room. Once I got here, my friend was filming me arrive, and I'll show you in the clip. That concludes my journey from New Zealand to South Korea during COVID-19. So I really look forward to sharing with you the rest of my adventures. I will catch you in the next video. Bye!